This week we head to historic Peterboro. It's easy to get there heading south from Vernon or north from Morrisville. But we decide to travel through the scenic rolling hills of Stockbridge Valley. Definitely not a bad place to get lost.
We were headed to Peterboro, and we were driving through the countryside, got horribly lost, and got to drive through hills and valleys. It reminded me very much of Ireland. And then we ended up in this little place called Munnsville. We found ourselves at the Village Cafe in the heart of the Stockbridge Valley, and I'm telling you, it is the best restaurant you're going to find down here. As a matter of fact, it's the only one.
Well, I went to school here, and I graduated in 1975, and it was a diner back then. It's changed hands a lot over the years, and it became available 4 years ago, and we saw it and thought we'd give it a try.
What do you guys come in here for? What's the best?
No place else to go.
I think that actually has a little truth to it.
We get directions and head west to Peterboro. This historic hamlet and the town of Smithfield were named for founder Peter Smith. His son Garrett Smith became famous for his commitment to the Abolition movement. You can learn more about this area's fascinating history at the Peterboro Area Museum, open every Sunday afternoon from 2 to 4.
We have exhibits on the early Peterboro history, lots of early photos of Peterboro buildings and of citizens. They'll learn about our early glass factories that we had here in town. Some will be interested in learning about Garrett Smith and the Underground Railroad. We have exhibits on people who were actually born in slavery and were brought to Peterboro and freed. Well, our history is one of the main things that we have left. It has a very important history to New York State and to the United States. And we've lost so many of our historic buildings that we're very interested in doing what we can to save what's left, the buildings that are left, and to gather together the information that's out there in private homes and in others' minds, so that we can pass it on to future generations.
To see what we can see, traveling round the Mohawk Valley, let's see what we can see.
Here in Peterboro, something which Garrett Smith thought was essential to women's independence was created. Now, you have to remember that back then in the 1800s, women wore layers upon layers of clothing, and underneath all that clothing was a terribly tight corset, which was not only cumbersome, but very, very unhealthy. Garrett Smith's daughter, Elizabeth Miller, designed some pants for women. They caught the eye of some very important women back then, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. When they saw them, they wanted to wear them, and they did. But when they were featured by Amelia Bloomer in her fashion magazine, they became known as bloomers. They became the most important dress reform of the 19th century. Of course, you talk to anybody here in Peterboro, and they think they should be called millers, not bloomers. So women around the world can thank Libby Miller for their fashion freedom.
Just trying to find my way back home. Just trying to find my way back home. Just trying to find my way back.
As if Peterboro didn't have enough in the way of firsts, consider this. It is in Peterboro that the first registered Holstein was born, and of course it was raised by none other than Garrett Smith Miller, a grandson to Garrett Smith.
Located in the historic former Presbyterian Church is the National Abolition Hall of Fame. It was launched by the Cabinet of Freedom, formed in 2004, to honor the work and legacy of abolitionists and to continue their struggle to end racism.
Back in October of 1835, the very first anti-slavery meeting in New York State was to have taken place in Utica, New York. We've talked about this before. 600 people met at the Bleecker Street Church to form an anti-slavery group. As it turned out, a mob broke up the meeting And there was a gentleman there by the name of Garrett Smith who said, well, come to where I live, we can have our meeting there. They came from all over to form the New York State Anti-Slavery Association, and they really were dedicated because they traveled miles. Many people walked, they took buggies, they took the canal to be here for that historic moment. This isn't my first time here. Many years ago, a play entitled Balm in Gilead by Judge Hugh Humphreys of Madison County was performed on this very stage, and I had the honor of playing Garrett Smith.
Well, there's no more useless conversation, no more broken, wasted dreams, no more sleeping alone there beside you, and no more saying.
When you visit Peterboro, and if you have an affinity for old historic cemeteries as I do, just outside of town, there is a cemetery here that is really, really old, and if you find yourself anywhere near the flagpole, you'll be in the area where the Smith family is buried. Many of the people we talked about in today's show, Garrett Smith, his grandson, and over there, Elizabeth Smith Miller. Also buried here is the Russell family. The Russell family were slaves. The entire family was purchased by Garrett Smith. Can you imagine purchasing a family? He brought them here to Peterboro to free them from slavery, and when their first child was born, he wanted them to name him Freeborn. They insisted, though, that the first child be named after him, Garrett. Most of us, when we think of the Civil War, associate blue with Union officers and gray with the Confederacy. But long before the Civil War, the New York State Militia, they wore gray uniforms, and that tradition was carried down to the present day with New York State troopers. If you come to Peterboro this weekend, and you should, this park is going to be filled from end to end with tents and with people dressed in traditional Civil War uniforms.
Every year during the second weekend in June, the Smithfield community celebrates its important heritage. The Civil War Living History Weekend offers the opportunity to experience life as it was 140 years ago. We visit the Historic Land Office on the Garrett Smith estate to learn more about the upcoming event.
For Civil War Weekend, we have all sorts of things. There's music 2 times a day. There is all sorts of food. Their soldiers will be down here. The battle is at 2 o'clock. Living historians are here all weekend long with all sorts of things to learn about. It's a great weekend because there's just so much to see, and you know, it really takes more than one day, so come on out for both.
It's really fun to hang out with all our friends and get to see some special things that you're not going to see every day. I usually spin with the Cherry Valley Spinners with our friend Robin Suarez. It just relaxes you, and it's just something that they did in Civil War times because they couldn't just go to the store and buy anything. They had to make all the stuff from scratch.
This is Garrett Smith's land office, and on these very bricks, I was told by Ross, the Civil War reenactor, of the people who were in here and who stood on these very bricks. You come down here, and I think you'll have happened to you what happened to me. I get goosebumps realizing that in this very building and on these bricks stood people like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, John Brown, Frederick Douglass, Garrett Smith, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Wow.
In the fertile hills surrounding Peterboro, we discover Aunt Bee's farm. Here, a young agronomist and a horticulturist are living their dream. They're growing sustainable and environmentally conscious food for their community and for their growing family.
We've been here 3.5 years farming actively and have been landowners for 5 years. We have a diversified herb and vegetable farm. We also plan to grow a lot of our own grains for our animals in the winter. Our herbs and vegetables are sold at farmers markets. We also have a CSA this year, and we do sales to restaurants. A CSA I view as subscription service for your vegetables. So you pay ahead, and then the farmer makes sure that you get a share once a week, typically. It often has many items that are in season. You kind of roll with the punches with the farmer, and you really understand what life as a farmer might be like depending on what the hailstorms bring for us. I have found that everyone is so gracious at the farmers market. They say, oh, we're so glad that a young couple wants to do this for a living, and you have such a great attitude. And they really are regulars at my booth all season long. I've just had such great response, and it's so encouraging.
Becky says that good soil is essential to a good crop of root vegetables, in particular my favorite, which are parsnips, and she has promised to call me when the crop comes in this year, right?
That's it.
Okay.
You can visit Aunt Bee at the Hamilton Farmers Market Saturdays from 8 to 1 or visit auntbeesfarm.com.